Then we say a lot of times that's that's the next generation of church. Well, sometimes they're part of the church now. I recall Brother King saying that he was saved because there was some young girls. Don't know how old they were, but they were very young. They were fasting and praying for their Uncle Bill and Aunt Xander. And they got their prayers answered. And so we have some, I'll tell some things about what's, and they'll say, oh, how sweet. Well, it is sweet, but it's also powerful. When a 6-year-old knows and is not told to go and pray, and she goes and prays and gets a prayer answered, that's going to stick with her the rest of her life. And that's powerful. And I appreciate the little kids here. They're an inspiration to me. And talking about answered prayer, I'll say this before I get started as well. I made a prayer request here last Sunday morning, and didn't look good for a while. And I'm not sure everything is completely settled, but there's things are looking up, and things are working. If one will stay true to his word, well, then things will work out even more. And again, I think God's using a little girl, a little one, to kind of really bring conviction on one. I would say, I'm praying for you. He'd say, well, you never know. But she's not really saying anything, but I'll not go into the details, but I think God's starting to work with them. Some years ago, I guess now, I don't know how long ago it's been, mother got a call, and actually it fell to me to do a graveside service for a fellow that we'd known for years. And this family, when I actually read the obituary later, I didn't read it all at the graveside, but when I reviewed it at home, it was maybe sometime later, the family called me pastor. And I thought, how can I be that pastor to them? I don't see them. Sometimes once a year, sometimes not. And I think this is the way that the Lord's opening up a thing. And you pray for me that I'll say what I need to say and when I need to say it, and not say any more than I need to say. And sometimes I wonder if I've said enough quick enough, because it seems like, but it's always good when the Lord's a step or two ahead of you. If you get a step or two ahead of God, well, you might be in a little bit of trouble there. But if he's ahead of you, well, then that's the thing. But that's my testimony. Again, pray for me as I continue to deal with those that I'm dealing with. Isaiah 43:19. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it? I will even make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Actually, I'm using only a part of that. I will, a new thing. Or no, I will do is actually, the title of my message is Heaven Will Be. Heaven will be. He says here he's going to do a new thing. At this point in Isaiah, he's talking probably about the millennial on earth, which there's a lot of new things there in a sense. But he's going to do a new thing. And I probably am speaking on heaven, and I don't think I'll be able to match Lawrence B. Hicks's message on there must be a heaven somewhere. But anytime you talk about heaven, you can get enthused. And like we say, there's reunion. He had about 7 R's. There's reunion, there's reality, there's a real, and there's several. But I've just got 3 things tonight. So, but anyway, someone said that in their younger days, preachers would preach on heaven where they'd want to go there. And they'd preach on hell so much they was afraid they was going to go there. And we need messages on both, because we need to know what to shun and what to perch for. But Jesus spoke more about heaven than he did hell. He wanted to tell us as much about hell. He spoke more about hell than he did heaven. I got that backwards here. I read it right, but I got it backwards. He wanted us to know enough about heaven that we would want to go there. But it's a little bit like, especially some of you that may have well, not maybe you guys, but the people that have money, when they get married, they don't tell their wife all that's going into the house. And then they bring their new wife in, and she's surprised, and so forth and so on. I think that's the way Jesus is. I think he wants us to know enough that we know it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be more than we can expect. But he wants a lot of surprises for us as well. But he wants us to know as much about hell as we can stand, so that we can know it's not a place you want to go. I don't even want to stay here during the tribulation when the forces of evil are unloosed on the earth, much less go to hell after that. I just don't want that. But heaven, my first thought was this: heaven will be new. My text says he will do a new thing. In Isaiah 65 and verse 17, it says, "Behold, I create a new heaven and a new earth. The former shall not be remembered, nor come to mind." That sounds like Revelation. There's a verse in Revelation that says, "I beheld a new heaven and a new earth." Is it going to be completely new? There are some people that say it's going to be, this one's going to be completely done over. Others say this will be completely destroyed and it'll be a completely separate one. Whichever way, it's going to be new. Then in 66 and 22 it says, "For as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain." I could probably use that again later in the message again, but I just now noticed that I might not refer back. I might forget that, but anyway, you'll. Many of us have had to manage with used items most of the time. How many of you? A lot of us have. We go get used cars sometimes. Oh, might be some nice, a couple years old. They say that's really the best year old or so. That's the best to get because they're still new, they're still on warranty, and yet they're not. They don't cost as much. That's the reason we go to if there's a Salvation Army thrift store or the Goodwill store, we'll go and there's a lot of good things there. There's a lot of good things to go and so forth. The suit that I have on, the pants and things, they came from crisis closets. It's been used. We do these things, but there may be things in heaven we've never seen or heard about, much less something that we just 1 Corinthians 2:9 says, "Eye hath not seen nor ear heard, there neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him." There's a song, "The half has not been told," and it probably takes from this particular verse. And I've thought of it this way: you can think of the good things that'll be in heaven. Double it and it'll still be not what you're thinking. It'll still be more than what you're thinking. Think as much as you want to about all the good things that might be there. And then you can still double it and it not be it'll be more than all that. Revelations 2:17 and the last part of that says, "To him that overcometh I will give a white stone, and in the stone a new name." I don't know what that means. I don't know what that new name is. I don't know. But I want to find out. I want to go and find out. Everything's going to be new in heaven. It's going to be something new. And it's not going to be used by anybody else. It's not going to be... Heaven, secondly, I want to point out, is heaven will be nice. I've got ends, going, so forth. Nice might be just a real common word, but I believe everybody understands the word nice. People will not get sick in heaven, and so on. The inhabitants shall say, and the inhabitants shall not say, "I am sick." That's in Isaiah 33 and 24. Again, he might be talking about the millennial, but if the millennial is this good, how good is it going to be in heaven? You'll just not get sick. And then it's confirmed again in Revelations 20, 24 and 1. Actually, that's another prophecy concerning the same thing. There'll be no sickness nor death in that city. People will have access to the tree of life again. And there's some things there, it says it gives its fruit every month. Well, sometimes there's no time in heaven, but if this tree gives every month, then you know the month has passed when this particular fruit comes up. I've even started and made a list of 12 different fruits that might be on that. Just when you see the kiwi, it's a certain month. When you see the orange, it's a certain month. When you see the apple, it's a certain month. When you see the grapefruit, it's a certain month. I don't know. I want to go and find out, because that'll be a new way of measuring time. It'll just be, and then in Revelation 2:7, and the second part of that anyway, says, to him that overcometh will I give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. They didn't eat of that in the garden, but it'll be there for us to eat in heaven. And I don't know what that fruit will be, but the leaves as well is for the healing of the nations, as I made mention, it'll not get sick. And in Revelations 11, chapter 11, beginning with 13 and going through the 16th verse, chapter 11 here gives a list of a lot of those old, especially the Old Testament people. We call it the Hall of Fame of Faith and so forth. It says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off. We're nearer than they were to that period of time, but they saw them afar off and were persuaded of them and embraced them, as we do today, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. I remember someone saying to this while she was preaching. She said, I'm as strange to the world as the world is to me. That's the way we ought to be, really. For they that say such things shall declare plainly that they seek a country, and we're going to another country. We're saying this is not our land. We're going to another place. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. Desiring a better country. It'll be a nice place. It'll be a very nice place to go to. There's going to be a lot of things there. I was thinking, as I was talking to my cousin and the family there in the hospital, praying over her with her when she'd had the stroke and so forth, and she's on the mend, and I haven't heard from her for a little while, for a few days, but I mean, as I prayed, I said, these things will not be in heaven at all. It'll not just be healed. It'll just not be there. It'll just not be there. And it'll be so nice to have those things behind us. And another thing this might sound a little unusual to say it this way, heaven will be normal. That come to me because there was a preacher I heard on the radio who said, heaven will be just like it is now. But then he said immediately, heaven will be completely different than it is now. There'll not be anything, it'll not be so different that will be uncomfortable. Can we go this, can we, but it won't be altogether like it is here. There'll just not be. Genesis 1:26. When you think of it this way, God said, let us make man in our own image. And the first verses of chapter 2 is what God intended man to be, what he intended to be normal before they sinned. Only Adam, when Adam sinned, the normal was shattered. It just wasn't there anymore. We have no idea, really, what Eden was like before they sinned. Only Adam knows what happened. It was shattered, it was broken, it was marred, it was defiled. Man became lost. We don't know what that was like, that normal. We just don't know what that normal was like. But I'd say they began to forget things. I'd have to say that Adam, sometimes he'd talking to one of his grandkids maybe, and he'd say, I named that animal, but I forgot. What did I call it? Haven't seen it in a while. And the grandson, well, that's what we're called, we call it this. Yeah, you're right. I'm sure those things are like that. But, Adam and Eve might have forgot a little bit of what God's normal was. Cain, Abel, Seth, and all those descendants, they never knew. We don't know. Somebody was talking to me on the phone, talking about a new kind of thing to make things well, and I don't know, I'll not go into all that, but he said this is the way God intended it, that the body will heal itself. And I got to thinking about that. Is that the way God intended it? I think God's normal was that we would not get sick to begin with. That we wouldn't get sick to begin with. I mean, when you consider how old they lived, how long they lived in the old days, well, they say, well, it might be a different way of measuring. I don't think so, because of the prophetic statement of the 7 days and the 7,000 years, 7 days of creation and 7,000 years of time that we have from creation to the end of the millennial. They lived to be 7, 8, and 850 years old, because the body was still, before the flood, the body was still strong enough to resist a lot of sicknesses. That was normal. And there's a passage, and maybe I could have put it in here, in when Isaiah is talking about the millennial. It said if a man would die at 100 years old, they'd mourn that it was a child that died. And that's my paraphrase of the way it is. In the millennial, it'll be again like it was in the Garden of Eden. Men will live a long time. And they won't be, they say, I don't want to live to be 200 years old. No, you won't be that way. They wasn't that way. There was several, even after the flood, lived to be 120 years old, and they were still as strong as they was when they was 80. I recall Jacob, when he died, he just all of a sudden one day he realized he was going to die. He went to bed and he blessed his sons and so forth and so on. He still had enough mind to know when Joseph brought his two, which was the oldest and which was the youngest, and he switched because the younger one was going to get more of a blessing than the older one, and so forth. And when he got done, he pulled his feet up in the bed and died. Now how that's different than it is today. I mean, people have a heart attack and fall down and die, but they didn't know it was coming. And other people take their bed and they're there for years, sick, before they die. But anyway, when Jesus said he came to seek and to save that which was lost, he may have also meant to restore the relationship, the lost relationship, that normal relationship that Adam had with God, walking in the cool of the day, talking to God. Certainly he means to save the lost, forgive the sins, and bring us back that way, but to restore the relationship, and then to bring man back to the elevation that he had, which was a little lower than the angels. And maybe he can't do that at this point. And obviously these other things, these things that's going to be in the future in heaven, that's going to be there. And those little lower than the angels. That particular verse, I don't have the verse down to show you, to tell you where it was, but that particular word angels is many times referring to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. They're spirits of the Trinity. In other words, we were created a little higher than Michael and Gabriel. In the beginning, we were higher than those. And I've said a few times anyway, man has fallen to close to and some below what brute beasts are. The distance that man fell is so overwhelming. But he wants to restore that elevation that we had, and before that, and thirdly, to regain that normal that we don't understand, we don't know about. What would it be like? I mean, a man wrote a book, what would Jesus do? And asking, as if Jesus was here, what would you do? What do you think he would do? And the kid that said one time, the mother was saying, there was a mess made, and she'd told him to clean up the mess, and they hadn't. She said, what would you say if Jesus walked in and saw this mess? What she was trying to say was, you know, you're not minding me. What would you say? And the kid said, well, I'd say take me back to heaven with you because I'm tired of living down here. But the normal of what's going on, of what was before, we don't know what that was. But to restore the relationship that we had and to restore the elevation of that back to just lower than the angels, you know, we're going to be, the church is the bride of Christ. It's never referred to any of the angels or group of angels as being a bride to any of the Father, the Son, or Holy Ghost. Israel itself can be considered the bride of God the Father. And so on. But there's no angels that says they're, and some might and some do. They leave their possessions to their animals or their pets. They will all this, and then they have a trustee. You make sure this cat's fed, but the cat's the one that owns it all. There's a few things like that, but it's not to be. But and of course these three things, as well as the salvation and forgiveness to sinners. And the last thing, I think I said I had 3. I got 4 points. Heaven will be never ending. Yeah. It'll be new. It'll be nice. It'll be normal, the way God wanted normal to be. But it won't ever end. It'll be forever. Down here, you know, we have times that we have to separate. We have to be apart from each other. One thing and another. Whether the young man goes out to work and leaves his young bride home, and she's there all by herself all day long, and so forth, and death causes separation. And there's several things that cause a separation, and things end in this life. Things end. In the Pilgrim's Progress, in the House of the Interpreter. I need to read that book a little bit again. I need to at least look at some of these. Of course, this just come to my mind, but there was, in one room, there was one, they were children. One was named Patience, and the other was named Passion, I guess it was. And Passion, he wanted it. You know, somebody, well, which one? And Patience would let him take it. He'd let him have it, and so forth. And after this little lesson was over, the interpreter asked Christian, what'd you get out of that? And he said something, and it was good. It wasn't anything wrong. But the interpreter said, the best thing is Patience waited till the last. He said, when those things that come last are there, there's nothing else to take its place, so it will last forever. If you hurry in and get in front of the line and get that, somebody else is behind you in line. You've got to give way someday to let it go to them. But the one who waits till the end, there's nothing else to take his place. So you can enjoy that as long as you want to. And heaven is never ending. Psalms 23, verse 6, second part of the verse says, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. That's all the days of my life. And then I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I want to dwell there forever. And in the house of the Lord. Not just a temple, not just coming to church. It's in the house of the Lord forever. And then in Revelations 21 and let's see, 22. And I saw no temple there, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple of it. And the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. And all the nations which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory into it. And the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, for there shall be no night there. It didn't say, well, It didn't say that it'd stay open all night. There's not any night there. And the gates stay open in the day and they shut it at night. That's how they thought they was going to catch Samson. Well, they closed the doors. They closed the gates. But then I think there'll be a lot of replays in heaven as well. And I'd like to watch that little replay. That gate's there, and the end that's set into that wall, and Samson just comes up, rips it out, and carries it up on the hill. And I don't think the hill was just 4 foot away. I think he carried it maybe from here halfway to Save-A-Lot, and then put it down. The gates will not be shut by day. And I guess we could say, and there ain't going to be any night there either. It's going to be open all day, and the day lasts forever. Because Jesus is the light. And he said, behold, I am alive forevermore. And as long as he's alive, there's going to be light. So, in Revelation 22, in verses 1 through 5, and he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the midst of the street thereof, and on either side of the river was there the tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruit, and yielded her fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. I made mention of that a minute ago. And there shall be no more curse, for the throne of God and the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him, and they shall see his face. Remember that song, Face to Face I Shall Behold Him? That'll be something. And his name shall be on their foreheads, and there shall be no night there, and they have no need of candle, neither light of the sun, for the Lord God giveth them light, and they shall reign forever and ever. And never ending. Never ending. In Isaiah, a prophecy of Jesus being born, it says, Isaiah 9-7, you hear it every Christmas, and of the increase of his government and peace, there shall be no end upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth forever, even forever. Forever. It's never ending. It's never ending. And at a point in this source, it's talking about Jesus being born and sitting on the throne of David. At a point, I heard a few weeks ago, they replay Vernon McGee's messages, and he said something every now and then. He says something that I kind of like, I hadn't thought of before. He said, hey, Jesus will be king of the whole earth. In the millennial reign, he'll be the king of the whole earth. And so that makes a little sense when he said that David himself might be reigning over Israel. And David will be raised from the dead. And in that resurrection, you don't die again. He'll still be there. And so on. It's hard to imagine anything not having an end. You know? Now, little kids might not ever consider that. How many times have you gone to the park? How many times have you been at grandma's? How many times this and that and so forth? And they think they'll never be able to come back. They wanted it to keep on. They wanted it to be that way. They don't know that this will end, and then there'll be another time later. They just can't seem to grasp that. In this case, we won't have to worry about it ending and coming back. It just won't be. But it is hard to. Talking about, we could refer back to normal again here. The statement, all good things must come to an end, was not what God intended. God intended everything to be the way that it was. Now, even in the Old Testament, God calls on his people to repent and be justified for something new to happen. Plead together in verse 26 and in brings to mind Isaiah 1:18. I think that's probably, come now and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. That starts a new life. People that get saved, that's a completely different thing. It's all new. I wish they were well enough to be in church, but I remember Tamara saying that she really couldn't believe. It was amazing, the difference between the time she was saved and the time she was a Christian. It was so much different and so much better and so forth, a new way of looking at it. And Revelations 21:27, there shall in no wise enter into heaven anything that defileth, neither whatsoever worketh abomination or maketh a lie, but they which are written in the Lamb's book of life. We have a good time when we come to church. I appreciate this church. It's better. I mean, I've been in some good churches, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of things at this church that I appreciate. I remember when I was riding the van, my Uncle Ray passed away. Visitation was going to be on Wednesday night, and I called Linda and I said, I'm going to be at the visitation, so don't come pick me up. I don't know if she's picking anybody else up or not, but even if she was, then you didn't have to come to my house and stop and honk, 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 honk. Well, where's he at? Where's he at? So forth. That's all I called. I just called Linda so she wouldn't have to come pick me up. It's kind of a long drive down to Ashland. But the next day, at the funeral, Randy and Teresa showed up. Linda didn't just take that piece of information and say, okay, thanks, I'm going to save me a trip. She said, you know, he's got an uncle that passed away. And the pastor showed up. I appreciated that. And there's a lot of other things. That one's the one that come to mind, but there's other things that's going on, that happens, and that you do. That I think you got a better vision than a lot of other places has. There's a lot of things here that several of us maybe disagree on, and it's a little bit tough sometimes when you believe one way and somebody else believes a little bit different and so forth. But I think we also realize that each of us are going to be accountable to God ourselves, and so we need to kind of, you know. But there's the new life needs to be considered. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time, then vanishes away. I remember a poster on the inside of a church. There was they took a little whatever. They'd have posters up on for a while in this particular church, and it said, "We have all of eternity to celebrate our victories. We only have a short time to win them." And so it's good to have a little bit of a victory shout every now and then. I like to hear shouting, and I like to have victories. And I was being really encouraged of the things that I told you about before I started service, before I started preaching. But there's more work to do. There's lots of other work to do. And those that are not saved. This is the time to make that decision for the Lord. That things get settled between you and God. Because just as heaven is never ending, hell is never ending. The other three that I made mention of, it'll be new. Hell might be the same old, same old. You'll have the same old characters and stuff that you lived with that you couldn't hardly stand. And in one of Brother Denton's books, Agent 21 Plus was talking, and he's talking about how bad Hitler was. And this guy wasn't a Christian. He said, he's burned. He said, but the 21 Plus was a preacher, and he said, if you don't get saved, you'll spend eternity with Hitler. I hadn't thought about that. So Heaven's going to be nice, but hell is not going to be nice. Heaven will be normal, but hell's not going to be normal. But never ending? Yep, both of them. There's a track I used to get. There's no fire escape in hell. That was what was on the front of it. There's no fire escape in hell. Well, we tarry just for a minute. Tara, if you want to come and play something on the piano for us, just to play. Maybe a verse and a chorus, or if it don't have a chorus, maybe 2 verses. If you want to come and pray, we'll be glad to pray with you. Jerry made mention earlier in the service, anytime during the service, you can come. Yeah, heaven will be everything we want it to be, and more. It'll be things that's going to be great, but we got to get ready. We need to get ready for it. Let's give you time to think, and those of you pray. It's just, maybe I should have gave a... Just as I am. You don't have to... sometimes it's okay to take care of things before you come to get saved, but you don't have to. You can come and God will help you make those things right. He'll welcome, pardon, cleanse, and relieve if you come just as you are. Because it says, thy promise, I believe. Come believing. Maybe the message will ring with you as you go. You don't have to come to the altar to get saved. You can save at home, anywhere you meet the conditions, and pray and believe. There's been lots of people do it that way.